For a long time, I was kind of always manning the barbecue. I would love to do some kind of dinner in a brewery. Whenever people come around to our house, I always want to make sure that they're aware that everything is on the table. Benefits of getting married, we were lucky enough to get some nice glasses and cutlery. Cooking pasta for that many people is often really difficult. I don't think Gandhi really wants to come and sit down with your mates when you're all half cut talking nonsense. You have to cue a song. You can't just change the song because that is just not good manners. It's not a good vibe.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tables to Talk About. Today I'm chatting to Luke Hemsley, who is the founder of alcohol-free wine brand Wednesday's Domaine, a brand on a mission to create an alternative for those midweek nights where you want to drink but you don't want to drink. I love chatting to Luke about his dream dinner party and his journey so far with Wednesday's Domaine, so let's get into it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Not at all. Delighted to be here.
Good to have you. Do you want to do a quick intro and tell people who you are in case they don't follow you already?
Yeah, well, I suspect that's probably most people. So my name's Luke Hemsley. I'm the founder of Wednesday's Domaine. We have a range of alcohol-free wines, and we're on a mission to become the midweek wine alternative for food and drink lovers.
How long have you been doing it for?
So I've been working on the business for close to 3 years now. We launched the business 2 years ago. So we launched in July of 2022 with 2 alcohol-free wines. We had 2 still wines, a white and a red. We now have a range of 6 non-alcoholic wines, so 2 sparkling, 4 still. And whilst we've only been going 2 years, it feels like a lifetime in both a good and a bad way. But yeah, we've been going for 2 years.
Amazing. What made you start in the first place? What was the kind of story behind that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a short answer, there's a long answer, so I'll try and give you the one that sits somewhere in between. Ultimately, I've wanted to set up my own business for as long as not as long as I can remember, but for a very, very long time. I've worked in a couple of different startups, and I kind of realized as COVID hit and we all had a bit more time to think, that there was a very real risk that I would go through my entire life telling everyone I want to set up a business and never do it unless I stopped and sat down and thought about what that would be. And I realized when I was looking at a load of other businesses, the 2 things that are super, super important to me are physical products and physical products that are rooted in some kind of delightful customer experience. So I can give you this, I can see you enjoy it, consume it, tell your friends about it. That's kind of what motivates me over the long run. And how that kind of transposed onto Wednesday's Domaine is that my wife and I spent some time with my parents, with her parents during COVID. And, we found ourselves having a drink most evenings. We're having, a beer or a glass of wine or a gin tonic. And I think, that's what most of us did. That was how you delineate day from night and the working day from the evening. And after a while, I just realized it wasn't particularly sustainable. It wasn't compatible with working hard, staying mentally and physically fit. So went to the supermarket, which I think was one of the few leisure activities you could do at the time.
Yeah, I loved going to the supermarket in lockdown.
And it was kind of like, what's going to be there this time? No flour, no eggs, plenty of non-alcoholic options, some great non-alcoholic beers, some great non-alcoholic spirits, lots of them, beautiful branding, very good quality. And that was just in complete and stark contrast to what you found in wine. There were very limited options. Those that existed had no brand or customer experience. And when you got home, they were really, really poor quality. And so I figured there was a gap for a great tasting, beautifully branded alcohol-free wine. And that's what we've tried to do with Wednesday's Domaine. We want to create products that people are proud to drink. They're proud to take to other people's houses. Whether you're drinking or not, it shouldn't matter. There should be a kind of equivalence of experience. So that's what we're trying to do.
Amazing. Was it kind of then that you were like, right, this is it. This is what we're going to do?
I was very, very lucky that the startup that I was working in previously, which had nothing to do with wine, or kind of consumer products. We had a product which helps small businesses manage their cash flow. So as unsexy as it gets, but actually really kind of foundational to running a business like Wednesday's Domaine. I had been there for close to 5 years. I was the first employee, and I went and spoke to the founder who'd heard me say so many times, one day I want to do what you're doing, Caroline. And just said, look, I've got this idea. I'd love to work on it. I've been doing it in early mornings, late nights. It needs a bit more of my attention. Can I have a bit of can I go part-time? And she was great about that. And my boss, well, at the time, a guy called John, he was super open to it. So there was a kind of slow ramp off, which was really helpful because it meant that I was able to maintain some kind of salary and also some kind of structure, because in the early days, we're doing a lot of Googling.
It's tough, yeah.
There isn't really enough, or there wasn't enough work to fill 5 days, particularly when you're looking to develop a new product. So there was a slow ramp ramp off of the previous company and into Wednesday's Domain, and that probably lasted 6 to 8 months, I think. To the point where they're like, right, Luke, now you really need to, piss off. You've been here for a while, and that kind of coincided with me being ready to do that anyway. So that was great.
Yeah, amazing. I do think that's the smartest way to do it. Not everyone does it that way.
It de-risks things, and I think one of the hardest things about running a business, particularly as a solo founder, is the number of voices you have in your head and the number of different things floating around. And I think if you can, in those early stages where there's so much uncertainty, maintain some kind of salary, some kind of structure, then you're giving yourself the best possible chance to really be focused in those moments where you're focusing on your new business.
Because it takes the pressure off, doesn't it? And you want to make the best decisions. You don't want to make decisions based on the scarcity of needing the money.
But I think for as long as you can avoid that, then great.
Amazing. And so now you work on it full time?
Now I work on it full time, have done for coming up to 3 years now. It was October of 2021 that I went full time on the business, and then we launched the following July. So yeah, this is me every kind of waking hour and occasionally the odd sleeping hour when things just flash into my head, often unwanted.
Yeah, amazing. Today we're going to be talking about your dream dinner party. You were saying that, it all kind of started from sitting around a table in COVID, having a drink in the evening. Do you like to host?
Yes is the quick answer. Love hosting, love having people around. Very lucky that in the house that my wife Hannah and I moved into was an absolute mess when we moved in, and we very much due to kind of knocking out the back of the house and creating a nice open plan kitchen, and we, now that we've got that, I think we really feel a desire to use that as much as possible. So we do host quite a lot, and that ranges from kind of super informal pop over for some dinner or lunch through to bigger events. My wife, I think this is the only time I'll ever get the chance to mention this, so I kind of want to, which is my wife and her old housemate set up a winter barbecue back in the day called Mullers and Bangers, where they only served two things, so mulled wine and sausages.
Incredible.
And having been for a long time, I was kind of always manning the barbecue. So I've gone from being the guy in charge of the barbecue when her and her flatmate lived together to a kind of retrospective co-founder, if you want, of Mullers and Bangers, which now happens at our house. There's kids kicking around. It's always in December. So it's freezing outside. But that's, I guess, a long-winded way of answering your question, which is yes, we love hosting, and it kind of takes
I love that. What an idea. And you do it every year?
Every Christmas. There was a fallow year in COVID. It was obviously disappointing, and we had a fallow year last year because our daughter was born in late November. We were so excited to bring it back. We've already got a date fixed for December, which I can't remember now. It's just great, and I love it on a personal level because...
Yeah, it sounds amazing. So will you be hosting your dream dinner party?
Yeah, I think so. And I think for me, there's there's two kind of dream dinner parties. There's one at home in surroundings that you're familiar with and kind of obvious to you. And then there's this other idea that I've had for a while, which is not original in any way, but essentially I would love to do some kind of dinner in a brewery or some kind of warehouse space where you've just got super simple, really long, straight table, everyone sitting down together, and then afterwards you can move into some kind of party, and it all happens in one room, but you've got
nice.
everything from having a drink to some food and a dance later on. That's the kind of other vision which I've done to differing degrees historically, but I think for the purpose of today's conversation, we'll go with it's at our house with our kind of 6-seater table.
Okay, amazing. And you said you've got quite an open plan kitchen dining room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're around the table. Set the scene for us. What are you doing with the table? Do you have specific things that you always pull out?
I guess the first thing is, when people come round, getting everyone a drink. And I think one of the things that it's a weird thing to pride yourself on, but I think whenever people come round to our house, I always want to make sure that they're aware that everything is on the table in terms of, beers, wine, spirits, cocktails, whatever they want is kind of there, because it's a real pet peeve when you go around to someone's house and you don't get offered a drink or something like that. I mean, whatever, it is what it is. But I think when people
Yeah.
come along, will often, make sure they've got a drink first and foremost, and it's what they'd like to drink. In
Yeah.
terms of the table itself, I think it depends whether Hannah or I are in charge. Hannah being my wife, she would default towards a much more table-scaped setup, lovely candles, flowers. I think one of the benefits of getting married is that you get, we were lucky enough to get some nice glasses and cutlery and
Yeah.
bowls and that sort of stuff. So that would all be out. If it was up to
All
me,
come
it
out.
would be a bit more rustic and a bit more mismatched. But I don't know if that's a stylistic thing or a laziness thing. I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think everyone would be kind of sitting down around the table. I think we probably would have done a seating plan. And I think
Yeah.
the seating plan would very much be designed to have that balance of familiarity and freshness. In terms of, you feel comfortable. You're not stuck up one end of the table with someone you don't know or don't like. But equally, I think one of the joys of going to someone's house for dinner is meeting or having a chat with someone that you don't otherwise know or you wouldn't normally speak
Yeah.
to. Then we'd be trying to engender a bit of that and knowing that these things tend to break up later on and people just sit where they want anyway.
Yeah, totally. It's doing a little bit of curation at the beginning, and then
exactly.
letting people be free and see where it takes them.
Exactly that. And I think the other thing to mention is, when you're hosting, there's a lot to be said for keeping things relatively simple and people taking their direction from you. Like if you're stressed and constantly running out of the room and having to turn up the oven, get something out of the fridge, whatever, everyone else is going to be pretty stressed. Or on edge, probably not stressed, but on edge. And so I think we will have done a lot of the cooking beforehand as much as possible. And I think we're trying to minimize the back and forth. And again, the nice thing about having an open plan kitchen is you can kind of be at the hob and getting stuff out of the oven and still chatting to people.
Yeah, the dream.
Exactly. Until it goes wrong, and then everyone can see that it's going wrong.
That's true. I've never thought about it from the other side, because for me, like, I'm sat on my dining table now and then my kitchen's down the corridor. I have that like back and forth when I've got people round, but I've never thought about when things go wrong and everyone's just there. No room for hiding.
Exactly. And that's where I think, doing what you can beforehand is really key, because I think we've all made the mistake, if you like hosting, if you've hosted a lot, everyone's made the mistake where they've cooked something for themselves and it's really nice. Having 10 people around, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And it doesn't always scale like that. And the two examples that stick in my mind are cooking pasta for that many people is often really difficult. And the other thing is, when you're cooking meat and roasting 2 or 3 chickens is a very different beast to roasting a chicken.
Yeah, and you don't often think about the oven space that's required.
And everything takes way longer if you've got more.
100%, yeah. Yeah, so keeping it as simple as possible.
Keeping it as simple as possible, and simple doesn't have to mean boring or basic, anything like that. It just means have prepared, and that can be cooking stuff beforehand, or it can be having cooked that before for that many.
Yeah, having the prep underway, knowing where you're at. Okay, so you talked briefly about a table plan. Who are you going to be inviting?
Very, very lucky to have quite a wide and diverse group of friends from all different times of my life, of Hannah's life, and so I think we try and block that into people who know each other or crossover, but where there's already some crossover, and so it's that's all quite nice. That's nothing revolutionary. One of the things, so the FT sometimes does a section around perfect dinner party guests, and I think one of the things I always notice when people answer this question is they go for someone super famous or who's had a massive impact on the world. And the reality is that I don't think Gandhi really wants to come and sit down with your mates when you're all half cut talking nonsense. I just don't think that's going to land in the right way. And so, having thought a bit about this, dead or people from history, I'd probably invite one of my grandmas. Both no longer with us, but both played massive roles in mine and my sister's lives, but also loved food in very different ways. So my mum's mum was Irish and very much a kind of meat and two veg or apple crumble character, but always did it really, really well. Amazing. When we were younger, used to go and stay at her house, lamb chops, mashed potato, but always delicious. And when she would come and stay at us, there was an apple crumble, there was some old school bird's custard, powdered custard, all that sort of stuff. Like, I'm a real sucker for that.
Yeah. It's funny how those things like stick with you, isn't it?
Yeah, they do. And I think with my dad's mum, she was Portuguese, came over to the UK when she was 17, but had an amazing grasp of what became kind of, I guess, British household cuisine. She would be cooking Chinese crab meat, sweet corn soup, she'd be cooking curries, she'd be cooking roasts. And there was a real kind of diversity of experience and flavors and food there. And, we'd be going around the house as kids and she'd be feeding us Bucks Fizz and all that sort of stuff and making pancakes. So I think I'd invite I think I'd probably have them.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true having got a bit older and, now had a family and all that sort of stuff. There's some nice stuff going on there. In terms of someone alive, someone famous, I've ummed and ahed on this. And I'm just going to preface it with, it's probably a terrible answer. So, if you're listening.
It's never a terrible answer.
I think there's two kind of types of character I've thought of. One is, someone like a James Dyson, like an unbelievable entrepreneur, someone who's dedicated life to innovation and creativity and constantly doing things that can't be done in inverted commas. As someone who's utterly restless in their experimentation, their ambition, but also like a really interesting, nice person. And again, maybe I'm wrong in that, but that's all. Or I would have someone like Ian Schrager, who's the guy who set up Studio 54 in New York back in the day. And I mean, he will have seen some things, and I just want to kind of. But also, I think
great chat.
Yeah, to my point about Gandhi, he's like the other end of the scale where right, I'm just going to ask you a load of questions. You just kind of wax lyrical, and I just want to hear, how was this back in the day? Did that really happen? He's going to have everyone really interested and engaged around the table. And I think those two characters hopefully aren't going to dominate in a way that it kills the flow of everyone else's conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Both would be really interesting from completely different perspectives.
Yeah, I think they'd also be quite helpful as well. I think they'd happily do the washing, well, the hoovering even. I think Dyson's going to be chuffed that we've got some of his products in, could even get a discount code. Like, I think both are going to be fictional. I'm constantly getting told I need to read more fiction, and so this was actually quite hard. Have you ever watched a program called This Is Us?
Yeah, I love This Is Us.
That changed mine and Hannah's life, as in whatever it is, 5-6 series of that. My youngest sister will say that I'm like a budget version of Jack. So
incredible.
I think I'd maybe get him on board to just talk about life and kind of, if you watch that program, if you don't, I'm really sorry because this will mean nothing, but that charts his kind of development from teenager through to, I won't spoil it for people, but through to, older age and having kids and the pressures of a job. And and he would have to be Jack. He couldn't be the guy who plays Jack.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, I think that, or again, having a young daughter, someone like Moana, who's who's a fictional Disney character, inspirational young girl who kind of charts her own course. I think I'd probably tag her in, but then I'd have to get my daughter out of bed, which would probably ruin the flow. I think I'll stick with Jack from This Is Us.
Yeah, nice. This Is Us is one of those programs that I'm so jealous of people that haven't watched it before. I'm so jealous that some people haven't watched it and can start it again not knowing what happened. So good for anyone that's listening that hasn't watched it. Absolutely add to list.
It really is, and I think it's remarkable the way that it sticks with you and stays with you, and how many parallels you can draw to your own life, because it's not particularly showy or flashy. And it's funny, there's I sound ridiculous here, but there's a guy that I used to be very friendly with when we were younger, and him and I were obsessed with the OC. As people
also incredible program.
Also incredible, but not as relatable. Kind of relatable to teenage strife, but not necessarily the life they lead. Anyway, I saw him at a wedding 2 summers ago, and we were talking about our love of the OC. And he said to me, I've got a confession to make. I've actually got a favourite program. Something's usurped that in my affections.
Yeah.
And him and I kind of just stopped and embraced, and it was just a beautiful moment to progress.
Oh, amazing! I love that you've transitioned through the ages. Oh yeah, both great programs. I keep saying that I'm going to restart the OC from the beginning because I've not rewatched it in years. But I keep seeing when it comes up on the TV, like even the pictures look so dated now.
They do.
Have you noticed?
I've had a very similar thought on all of that. I should rewatch it, and then looking at it, I think, will it be the same? And
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it.
good to hear that you're thinking about that too. I'm wrestling with the same dilemma.
Yeah, my husband's also never watched it, so I keep trying to convince him to watch it with me
Yeah,
because I'm like, if I'm going to rewatch it, like you need to experience this for the
yeah.
first time.
I'm amazed you let us get that far if he's not watched.
He's not on board yet, so maybe I've got some more work to do. But we did watch This Is Us together, so we got to, because it's finished now for anyone that hasn't watched it. We got to the last episode. We'd watched the one before, and he was like, "No, I'm not watching it. I'm not watching the last episode. Don't want it to end." And I was like, "Sorry,
Yeah.
what?"
Did you watch it together? Or
He was like, "No, we'll go." He was like, "Let's go to bed and we'll save it." And I was like, "I can't go to bed now knowing that there's one more episode
Yeah.
to watch."
Yeah,
Like, it's an absolute no-go.
I mean, I admire his kind of restraint and stoicism to do that, but yeah, you got to press on. There's an emotional evening in our household when it finished.
Yeah, I just don't have self-control like that. If I know it's there, I've got to watch it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the same with like when people have the opportunity to find out if they're having a boy or a girl, and like, I don't know what you did. Did you find out?
we actually didn't find out.
Did you not? How do you have the self-control to not know?
Well, to build on that, a very good friend of mine whose wife is pregnant with their second, they have twice now found out and chosen not to tell anyone, which I think shows even more self-restraint to have someone just pestering you the whole time, trying to answer. No, it's funny you say that. I think us not finding out, people say it's the kind of greatest surprise of your life, and it really was, particularly because we had convinced ourselves that our daughter was going to be a ginger boy and she was a dark girl. So when she came out, we were kind of staring at her in utter disbelief. And one of the doctors said, "Are you okay? Do you need clarification?" I'm like, no, we can see what's in front of us. It's just not what we pictured at all, which is still, I think, one of the greatest surprises. No, not one of the greatest surprise of my life.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, it sounds amazing, but I'm just like, how could I?
Yeah.
I just know that I would not have enough self-control.
Okay, so you would find out.
Yeah, I think so.
I think fair enough, and I think lots of people do, and it's nice because then you can plan for what's coming, whether it's a boy or
Oh, amazing though. That must be such an incredible moment.
yeah, no, what was
So, okay, we've got all the guests round the table. We've got quite an eclectic group in a great
yeah,
way.
yeah,
I'm also thinking that, like, I'm going off that Moana is still there as well.
yeah. She's kicking around.
Yeah, she's kicking around. You've mentioned her now, so we can't backtrack.
Absolutely.
What are you going to be listening to?
There's a series of playlists on Spotify called Out of Africa Tapes, and they have a lot of what was, I guess, historically undiscovered is the wrong word, but a lot of music that was recorded in different African countries in the 70s, 80s, 90s that was then either on tape or CD that was never kind of transferred over to the digital sphere, and they specialize in pulling a lot of that out. So I think I would have something like that on in the background that's kind of at once utterly different yet quite familiar, and people are often quite intrigued by that, what's going on. That, or I think some kind of funk, soul, Motown playlist. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. My mother-in-law is massively into her northern soul, and that obviously crosses over a lot with Motown. I think we definitely have something like that on because you can't really go wrong. People love it. It's a nice vibe, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, nice. It's a great background music choice.
Really
sure.
is, yeah. And it can also ramp nicely in the right way. But I think Ian Schrager might have a few things to say from his Studio 54 days. Maybe he'd want to take control of the Spotify.
Yeah.
Maybe he'd be livid with listening to Spotify. I don't know. Maybe he'd want to get the vinyl out.
Yeah, true. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, and I'd with Ian. I actually own a few vinyls, but no vinyl player, which is quite a problem.
I have a similar problem where I'm looking over here because I have a record player, but it doesn't work. Got a load of vinyls, and that's one of those things that has been, yeah, something on the list to sort out for a long time
Well, I
now.
guess maybe if you ever host this kind of mystical dinner party, that would give you the
Yeah.
impetus to get it sorted.
Yeah. I do think it's nice when you like set the tone with the
Yeah,
music, but then you're happy for guests to just like get involved and
yeah.
take over.
The only thing I would add to that is I agree with you, by the way, Callie. Anything I'd add to that is you have to cue a song. You can't just change the song
Agree.
because that is just not good manners. It's not a good vibe. It's yeah, that's the only no-no I'd say.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then also continue to cue things so that it doesn't suddenly stop.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As in take,
And then it's
take
like panic, somebody put something on.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Okay, so we've completely set the scene. What are you
Yeah.
going to be serving?
Yeah, so I was talking to Hannah about this last night. We were talking about this notion of kind of flow and creating a consistent experience. And I was saying, I'm quite torn between this idea of picking a cuisine and rolling with it, or just saying, look, I love these dishes. You're in our house, we're going to throw them out. We concluded that whilst the latter was maybe more fun, I think, for hosting purposes, we're going with a consistent experience. So this, I mean, just shows my complete and utter lack of imagination. But I think we're going to go down the Italian route. And so I think we're going to have gazpacho to start. And that's a really interesting one because gazpacho is delicious, it's interesting, it always creates a talking point. So you're serving a cold soup, but it's also a nightmare to make. If you've ever made gazpacho, it takes a long time. I've never made it either because I saw Hannah make it once and I was like,
But you're forever.
this is taking so long. So that said, there's a lot of nice shop bought ones. So I think I'd maybe go to somewhere like a Brindisa and get
Mm-hmm.
hold of a few cartons of that. I would be careful not to mislead people. I would just say this is from Brindisa. I wouldn't
Yeah.
put it in something else and then pour it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got to own the fact that you've got to
Yeah.
bought it.
And we'd have the nice pepper grinder. We've got kind of like an old school Peugeot pepper grinder, and we'd have some flavored
Amazing.
oils on the table and all that sort of stuff. So if you want to customize a gazpacho, you can. We then move into some kind of pasta course. I would love some kind of vongole or seafood pasta. Hannah is
Mm-hmm.
allergic to seafood and shellfish, so we'd probably end up having like a cacio e pepe or a carbonara or something super
Yeah.
simple. Often people are like, you can't serve carbonara when people are coming round. It's so obvious you're not a uni anymore. And my view is, if you're in an amazing Italian restaurant, you would probably order that because
Yeah.
in class.
Also, there's a difference between like uni carbonara and like probably the carbonara you'd make now.
Yeah, I'm still searching to work out what the difference is. You're right, Callie, to say that I think it would be a bit more of a kind of high grade experience.
Yeah.
And then I think at the end, I would probably go to like an affogato or something like that, where there's a
Mm-hmm.
bit of theatre involved. Most people, know affogatos, might like affogatos, but I think that idea of combining coffee and ice cream is really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. That said, there's a woman that I've done some work with or know through work and have met a few times historically, and she has this thing where whenever she doesn't like pudding, she doesn't like dessert, so in a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant she'll just order another starter, and so she has sometimes had like 6 oysters for pudding, and I think there's a lot to be said for that,
Yeah.
particularly
I
if you
have so much respect for that.
yeah, I think it's quite punchy. It's quite unusual, but she's like, there's often multiple starters that I want, so I'm just giving myself another
Yeah.
shot, basically, another chance. And part of me would want to do something like that, and again surprise people slightly, and then just be
Mm-hmm.
happy that maybe have the affogato or the coffee afterwards. And then the other thing I'd
Mm-hmm.
say is a Negroni, or and this is coming from a man who hated Negronis for a long time and now
Yeah.
has kind of come to like them a lot more, or some kind of rum punch. I'd have something which just changes the like energy a little bit. There's a lot to be said for just bedding in and sitting down and opening another bottle of wine and all that sort of stuff, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we'd introduce something which might get people moving around or talking. That would be part of it.
Yeah, I love that. How do you personally make your Negroni or your rum punch?
When it comes to Negroni, I ask Hannah to make it. We're kind of open to variations on that, like a spagliato or an Americano, because if you
Yeah,
might put a sparkling wine in there, because if you have, a couple of those, you're in real
danger.
trouble. And that's speaking as a man who runs a non-alcoholic wine company. Um, and then with a rum punch, I would make that. And there's a great rhyme which I can't remember, which is basically like one of sweet, two of weak, three of strong, and four of weak, or one of sweet, two of sour, three of strong, four of weak, and it's basically
Right.
the ingredients of a rum punch. And you'll have to look this up, because if you notice
I
that
will.
rhyme, that was definitely wrong. But it's basically lime juice, simple syrup, rum, and water. And if
Okay.
you put those all together in those proportions, or once
Mm.
you've looked it up, then it's just absolutely delicious. And I think that is such a nice drink to get people into.
Yeah, I love a rum punch.
It's a bit like baking a cake. When you make a rum punch, you're like, oh my God, there is a lot of rum in here. And when you bake a cake, you're like, there is a lot of sugar in this. And so that's why it's often, you just have to kind of get on board with that and accept that it's a evening of indulgence, and you're not worrying about any of that.
Yeah, 100%. That's what puts me off baking. Like, I do bake occasionally, but I prefer cooking because it kind of, for me, ruins the eating of
Yeah.
the baked thing.
Yeah. And
Because you know how much sugar you've put in, or the lump of butter that went
yeah,
in at the beginning.
and I think baking is also very technical, very
Mm.
exacting. I think a lot of people who, are, I guess, home cooks like us, who enjoy cooking, love food, enjoy hosting, you like that freedom that comes with tasting something.
Yeah.
Season, this needs a bit more salt or stock or whatever. With baking, if you do that, it just won't rise, or it will be moist, or it won't work. And so,
It's a lot more fickle.
yeah, exactly. You have no control over it. And so that's what terrifies me about baking.
Yeah, and it's really annoying when you've spent loads of time doing it and then it doesn't work out and you're like, cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. On lots of levels, I won't be baking anything if people are coming around.
Fair. Stick with the affogato, I think.
Exactly.
What are you going to be serving to drink through the dinner?
I think we would have, in line with my thinking that people should, have what they want to drink. But I think I'd put some wine on the table, but I'd have a couple of bottles of wine, or a couple of stars of wine, and that might be a white and a red, or it might be two whites. It's interesting. I guess two things to develop on that. One is I would try and serve the same wine through the evening. So I think only in recent years have I progressed from the full student mentality of whatever you have in your cupboard, just put on your table. And so that means that someone at one end could be drinking an entirely different red wine to someone at the other end. I would try and make sure that we've got at least a few bottles of one white and one red, so that there's just kind of consistency there. The other thing that I was about to say on the wine, so we've covered the example of having whites and reds, and having, making sure you've got enough bottles of them. Something that an investor of ours does at Wednesday's Domaine, which I think is a real flex, is that he basically serves two red wines at dinner. So he's like, these are both really interesting wines. They're slightly different styles. Let's have both at once. So I think I'd maybe do something like that. But I think there's a balance to be found in making sure people are comfortable and relaxed and whatever, and people really enjoying the wine. And there's a risk of making that too much of the focal point. So I think I'd stick to making sure that everyone who wants a drink has a drink, and go from there.
Then people want to try a bit of one, try a bit of another, make an effort to pass it around rather than it just ending up sat in front of you.
It gets people talking, and creates this ability to kind of communicate across the table and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so nice. Would you have some of your wine?
I think we'd have to. I think it's obligatory at all gatherings to have bottles of Wednesday's Domaine present. Ultimately, that's the vision for the business in many respects, that you've got a table full of people sitting around, eating, drinking. You've got bottles of wine, beer, whatever on the table. And some of it's alcoholic, some of it's not. It doesn't matter. As I said, there's that equivalence of experience. The other thing I would do, Callie, which is important, is I absolutely love sparkling water.
Yeah.
But very much go through enough of it that I can't be ponying up on nice branded sparkling water the whole time. Just going to Lidl and getting a 6 or a 12 pack. I think having tap water and sparkling water on the table is also a nice touch. Like, I think those are little things which go a long way to
Agree.
someone's experience of leaving your house and being like, okay, Luke and Hannah thought about that. Like, that was
Yeah.
really nice. I felt very relaxed, well catered for, all that sort of stuff.
You should get a soda stream if you don't have one.
My view of soda streams, I think, has been permanently impacted by the one at my parents' house, which is always just something's always gone wrong with it, or they've run out of or like someone's put something syrupy in the soda stream and then it's all stuck to it. And I'm like, there's that other brand.
They give you strict guidelines. Don't put the syrup in the thing.
But guess what? People do, and then it causes problems. And I just think it's another thing. It's one of the reasons that I don't own an air fryer. It's like it's another thing to clog up your kitchen. Whilst it may be great, I just no. And there's beautiful metallic kind of premium soda streams you can get. I can't remember the name of the brand. They are beautiful, but I think I would be happy for that to clog up my kitchen, but I don't have 300 quid to spend on
fizzy water.
Yeah, exactly.
I keep having the air fryer conversation with people at the moment because we also don't have one, and I feel like we're probably the minority now.
It's interesting though because I think we've passed peak air fryer, and I can't work out if that's because they've now become fully mainstream, so it's just accepted that you would have one, or lots of people do have, or because people are like, actually it's basically just an oven. Like, I've already got one of those, and so I'm not sure why that is. What do you think?
Well, we have a very small kitchen, so part of my reasoning is the same as you, where it's just another thing on the side. We have a lot of appliances and already not enough place to put them. I feel like if I got one, I would get really lazy and I wouldn't cook things the way that I do now. Having had a lot of conversations with people lately about them, I think the speed would be great. Like, there's so many things that you can do in them that are cooking the same things you might cook in the oven, just much faster and with much less oil. Or I can see both sides. I'm very much sat on the fence.
I think the main motivation to buy one for me would be to cook nice chips, because whatever I do, whatever technique I use, short of having a big vat of kind of boiling oil in our kitchen, I just can't make nice chips at home. And I think that would be a real motivator.
Yeah, we do oven chips quite a lot, and I feel like they're not bad.
Maybe I just need to get back into giving that a go.
Again, like, they probably could be crispier if they were in an air fryer or deep fried. I think they're good enough.
In my head, I'm envisaging like honest burger levels of perfection when it comes to chips. That's kind of what I'm looking for from the air fryer, I would say.
All right, well, jury's out.
Yeah, agreed. As things stand, neither of us have an air fryer.
No. I'll let you know if that changes. I feel like I'm more on the fence than I used to be, so who knows, could tipple over the other side. Sparkling water on the table. We've got various wine on the table for the meal, and then we're moving more into some sort of cocktail in the evening. Are you going to be having any sort of entertainment?
I would say my default is very anti-entertainment. You don't need it. You know, if you've got the right guests, then you should be having a lovely time sitting and chatting and all that sort of stuff. So it's not going to be a kind of come dine with me extravaganza where a magician turns up or anything like that. That's kind of when you ask that question, that's what I'm picturing. Some kind of magician and it just killing the complete flow and vibe of the evening. Forced. I think there's a lot to be said for having a disco light or something like that. Like, there really is something to be said for that. And I'm not talking anything particularly professional or expensive. I'm talking like a 10 quid one off Amazon that just rotates round and round. Like, that can really change the feeling of the evening. I also think just moving rooms can change the flow of an evening, or standing up. You know, no is the answer to the entertainment, but I would maybe encourage some kind of shift, whether that's in music or drinks or location or whatever it is. That's how I'd kind of approach things.
We actually used to have a screw-in disco light.
Okay.
Like, so you could take your light bulb out and just put the disco light in.
Great.
And that was incredible. Yeah, just like on standby.
You go to bed and then you come down in the morning a bit bleary-eyed and you just want to turn that on. You're like, oh my God, the disco light. Oh, yeah, that is a nightmare.
Yeah. But Yeah, so good to have in the cupboard for when you need it, you know?
Agreed. I'm a big fan.
Also, you can get those lights on like Amazon and things now where you can control them from your phone and you can change them to any color, which
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, my brother-in-law is very into all that sort of stuff. I would say that there's a kind of he's very like if there's something cool and techy, he'll embrace it. Whereas I'm the complete opposite. I'm like an absolute heathen who will resist, and then at the last minute be like, "That's quite cool." So he can control. Whether they used to live in Australia, he could control their house in Sydney from his phone and like put the kettle on. I'm like, why don't you just go and he's like, well, it means that the kettle's boiled by the time I go downstairs. And so sounds interesting, but again, my reaction is just like, no.
yeah, I think this is more budget, as in like it's just a different light bulb that you can then change the color of. Yeah, I'm intrigued by I just feel like it would all break and then I'd have more problems than I started with.
That's exactly my logic. Albeit we do, this is hardly the frontier of technology, but dimmer switches. When we did our kitchen, we put in dimmer switches, and the builder said, do you want dimmer switches? We're like, don't know, sounds expensive, or just go for regular on off. And he was like, they're exactly the same price. So having dimmer switches, lovely, game changer, and that's perfect for creating a bit of mood lighting when you've got people around.
Yeah, you're so right. I've got some quick fire questions for you before we end. Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Favourite kitchen tool?
Easy question because I've been buying them for people recently. A microplane, and what I mean by that is like a super fine grater for parmesan, that sort of stuff. Easily the most beautiful, ergonomic, aesthetic. I'd be getting that out and handing that to James Dyson and saying, "What do you think of this?"
What's the brand of the one that you keep buying for people?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was just thinking that as I was saying that. The one that we have is very long and thin, has a beautiful wooden handle, kind of a rectangular wooden handle with rounded edges at the bottom. And so wooden handle, metal top, kind of a bit of a 2/3, 1/3 split, and it just feels amazing, looks amazing, very effective, really easy to clean. That's like undoubtedly my answer to that.
Favourite crisps?
Oh, good question. Really good question. Do you know what? I'm actually thinking of all sorts of wacky crisps, ridge cut, some kind of ridge cut crisp, some kind, like I'm even flashing back to skips and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
My answer would be actually kind of some kind of European supermarket sourced ready salted crisps, which are like aggressively salty, and then I'd make it interesting through the dips. So I'd have some aioli, some tzatziki, all that sort of stuff, but the crisps would be very salty, ready
Plain
salt.
and salty. Yeah, nice. You can't go wrong with a salty crisp.
No, the only thing that maybe would sway me from that is an American style Cheeto, really big, full of E-numbers. Definitely not very good for you, but absolutely addictive and delicious.
Yeah, I get that. Go to hangover meal.
I either go one of two ways when I'm hungover, which is, and I'm sure most people are the same, you either kind of want to eat all sorts of disgusting food, or you want to be super, super healthy and kind of cleanse yourself. I think I would go, let's actually pick somewhere in between. I would go for something like a ramen, which has got more like intensity of flavor, very salty, very umami, but you can kind of kid yourself that you're doing something right for your body.
But you've still got the carbs.
Lots of carbs, as in I'm adding extra noodles, there's an extra egg thrown in there, all that sort of stuff. Like that's probably what I'm going to go for.
Do you have a specific place that you order a ramen from?
The one that's near us in Tooting is Koi Ramen, and I'm loyal to Koi Ramen. When I'm working in central London, love Tonkotsu. I think they do an amazing job. I actually love what I kind of refer to as a corner shop ramen, which is basically going and just getting what you've already got. Most people, we do, we'll have some stock cubes at home. Stock cubes, spring onions, some really like budget noodles, cooking up some chicken in whatever I have in the cupboard, which is often kind of chili oil, soy sauce, sesame oil, all that sort of stuff, lumping it in. If I'm home alone, that's what I'm cooking. So I think maybe a homemade corner shop ramen is what I might go for.
Yeah, delicious. So it's all stuff that you usually would have in the cupboard, or
yeah, exactly.
You can find things and chuck
Exactly.
it in, and it'll still be great.
Exactly. And if you're extra hungover, I think you'd maybe go for like a thicker udon style noodle, which is just going to sit heavy in your stomach, help you kind of go to sleep on the sofa watching an old James Bond film on ITV on a Sunday.
Sounds perfect.
Really does.
Supermarket of choice.
I'm loyal to Lidl. I couldn't be a bigger proponent of Lidl. I absolutely love it, and I think what they've done very clever. When I lived years ago in Tooting, that was kind of when Lidl was first making its push into the UK. Everything was really cheap, but there was nothing that you recognised. There were no brands there or anything like that. One of the things they were incredibly smart about, and how they successfully lured a lot of shoppers away from other supermarket chains, is by recognizing what's important to people. People want to have Heinz baked beans, Hellman's mayonnaise, all that sort of stuff. And so, local to us, I would say, yeah, definitely Lidl. And then, being in Tooting and having this enormous variety of different cultures around us, I would then go out into Tooting if I was having people over and kind of pick up things from different shops. If we're cooking a curry and we have people around, there's a great shop near us called Daily Fresh Naan, and all it sells is naan breads. And actually, having that sort of stuff is amazing because it adds to the theatre and the story of having people around.
I love Lidl too. Big Lidl fan. Although it's usually, I would say we're like 80% Lidl, 20% Sainsbury's.
We're exactly the same because there's a Sainsbury's near us in the tube, and there are certain things that you're going to get in the Sainsbury's that you can't in a Lidl. There's a lot to be said for most supermarkets. If you want to kind of treat yourself, you want a calming, clear moment. Going into a Waitrose is often a beautiful experience. M&S, if you're on the go, like an M&S.
Love a wander around as an M&S or a Waitrose, but I don't need to shop there all the time.
And an M&S service station is unbelievable because it gives you that little kind of taste of luxury, often in a moment where you're just a bit stressed or on the move or whatever.
Agree. If I need to stop at a service station, it's not an M&S one, I'm going to keep driving until the next M&S one.
Exactly. Red light on the petrol, but you're just crawling along.
You're like, no, this is not what I need. Amazing. Okay, let's do one more. Something you always have in the cupboard.
I would actually answer this by saying I'm going to add something new that we have. So, my old answer would have been Skippy peanut butter. Smooth Skippy peanut butter. Whenever my mother-in-law goes to Costco, that's always on their order sheet. Would you mind getting us like a big tub of that? More recently, that has been usurped by a massive tub of kind of chili oil, chili flakes, like garlic. I can never remember the name of the brand. We've got a beautiful small one from White Masao, but then we've also got the bigger one with the red label and the lady's face on the front, which is just unbelievable. And
the crispy chili, or I've also got the big tub.
That's going in the homemade ramen. That's going on eggs. That's going on also everything. And I would argue it's kind of borderline addictive.
I'm just kind of coming out of a phase that I've been in recently where I've been putting it on everything.
Yeah, I am actually in a similar place. What's your answer to that question, by the way, Callie? Something you always have in your cupboard?
That is a good one. I would say a really good olive oil.
I think the really good olive oil, that's actually one of the things that came through my head. I think people increasingly buy that as a gift, I would say. A lot was around our house the other day and they turned up with a lovely Greek olive oil that's kind of sitting there alongside some others we're given. And that again, is a really, really nice touch, I think.
Yeah, great gift. Great, like dinner party gift if you don't want to bring a bottle of wine or flowers or.
Yeah, exactly. I'd hope someone bring a wine and maybe some olive oil as well. But they are, I agree, a lovely touch.
All right. Well, I think that's as good a place as any to finish. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was so fun. Do you want to let people know where they can find you or buy Wednesday's Domaine?
The first thing to say, Callie, is thank you very much for having me. It's been great to sit and an hour's passed in no time at all. So I really, really appreciate it. Love chatting. In terms of Wednesday's Domain, where you can find us, the best place to find us is our website, wednesdaysdomain.com. We've got a variety of different selection packs and cases. You can find all of our wines there, and they're available with free next working day delivery. We're also stocked in a whole host of different wine shops, delis, restaurants. And if you get in touch with us through our Instagram or hello@wednesdaysdomain.com, we can point you to the direction of our nearest stockist.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Nice one.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tables to Talk About. If you enjoyed it, I'd absolutely love if you would subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps people find us and allows me to get the absolute best guests that I can for you. If we've inspired you to get hosting and you fancy yourself some playful tableware, or you need help setting the scene for an upcoming event, you can follow us at Studio Dine on socials or check out our website studiodine.com for more. I'll see you next time.